Hello, this is Jonathan Martin, and in this video I'll be introducing the topic of program management. I want to start by recapping something that was introduced during the 10 fundamentals of project management when we looked at the history of projects and the development of the project management body of knowledge and this idea that project managers have this toolbox of best practice. When we last left it, it was probably the late 60s and the JFK's speech of the space race and how that helped link with some of the total quality management ideas that had been around before that to highlight the techniques, tools, processes of projects and this idea of continual development and improvement. Let's bring that up to date a little bit more. And I've mentioned before that I did my Masters in Business Administration, my MBA, specialising in project management. And I started that in the mid 1990s. And it was a great course, and a lot of the stuff I'm sort of sharing with you over these videos is influenced by what I learned and my experience subsequent to that. But one of the things that was part of the syllabus of the course then was that it was just really talked about project management, and the body of knowledge at that time didn't really make much of a distinction between small projects and big projects, whether that's building and deploying an oil rig, a massive construction program like the Eurotunnel between England and France under the English Channel, or perhaps an IT project. It was all the same body of knowledge. A lot of theory was used interchangeably, and as more work's been done on refining and expanding the body of knowledge over time, a number of things started to happen in the sort of late 1990s in the new millennium, and that influenced some of the things we're now going to talk about. There was a greater recognition of the competence of project management and the need for project management in organisations as they tried to change more and more to save money and to just be competitive. There was this idea, as I say, with my MBA, that there was projects and there was big projects. That no longer really cut it. There was a lot of big project failures, and the body of knowledge tried to learn from what was going wrong to put things in place so that the bigger projects could be managed in a different way. And that's when the idea of sort of programs came into being. And also there was this idea that projects delivered benefits, and quite often, as part of this sort of media saying that projects failed, quite often benefits that were outlined at the start of a project weren't being realised. And there was this idea that we needed to focus a bit more on how can we be a bit smarter in how we define and deliver benefits corporately. Both projects, programs, portfolios are all overheads to the normal operation of the business. There's all these sort of temporary organisation structures set up to deliver the projects, and we need to make sure that the effort, the time, the resources that are being put into projects are actually are accountable to actually delivering the benefits that were set out. And that's really where portfolio management comes in. So as part of the development and the refinement of the project management body of knowledge, there's a greater distinction now between projects, programs and portfolios. And there's also the idea that to support this competence in project management, there's some support within the organisation needed to help project, program and portfolio managers, both in terms of things like project planning, administration, some of the quality aspects, some of the financial aspects. So there's a whole sort of project support office environment that has also gained sort of prevalence since the turn of the new millennium. I guess that begs the question, so what is a program? Well, the program is a temporary, flexible organisational structure in a similar way to that of a project. It's created to coordinate, direct and oversee the implementation of a set of related projects and activities. So that's, no longer is this a big project, but we're recognising that projects are good for managing, chunks of work, but a program, a big thing where a lot of things are going on, we perhaps need to be a bit sort of cleverer and try and find a way of relating a number of projects and activities under this bigger umbrella that we're now going to call a program. A program delivers outcomes and benefits. As I said a moment ago, the whole realisation of benefits has sometimes been a bit hit and miss, and projects are quite good at delivering an outcome, but the benefit itself may well take 6-8 months after the project is finished to be fully realised. For example, implementing a computer system, the project could be finished once the computer system's in place and everybody's trained, but the benefits from having that computer system may take longer for that system to be bedded in and for the actual business to sort of adopt it properly. And there's no point really in keeping the project, the overhead of the project organisation structure going until all the benefits are realised. So you really want to close the project down, but not lose track of the fact that there's some benefits that we still want to track and measure. And a program is, as I say, one way of helping to have an umbrella over that to help manage it. A program is related to an organisation's strategic objectives. So again, it's this idea that it's much bigger than perhaps a project is in its own right. And a program is often likely to have a lifespan of potentially several years. I think one of the reasons why projects perhaps failed is that as soon as you get a big project, it might be 2 years long. A lot can happen in that 2 years, and some of the controls and governance that you perhaps put around a project wasn't quite effective. But by having this new distinction of a program, different governance, different controls can be put in place to help manage what needs to happen, and that change and uncertainty that might happen as things that start to span over years. So a project is very good at doing something in perhaps a 3 or 4 month time span, being very clear about what the objectives is, set it up, deliver it, and then review it. Whereas a program is this bigger thing that runs over, I say, potentially several years. So from that definition, let's look at the context of a program and try and put that definition into some sort of a diagram that might make a little bit more sense. Well, as we said, a program has this big sort of foot and basis in the strategy of the organisation. And in general, what happens at the strategic level is that there's some sort of business strategy, some corporate strategy, which determines the direction of travel for that organisation. And that normally means that there's this starting point, this current state, and in order to deliver the strategy, they need to look into the crystal ball and say, well, what's things going to look like in the future? So you've got this idea of a future state, and in between the two, there's this gap, there's this capability gap, and it's that gap that has to be filled. And that gap can be filled in a number of ways. One way is potentially to set up a program to help bridge that gap. And within that program, there's some sort of key elements to the program that need to be defined up front to help the organisation manage a program and prove that it's actually worth to set up the program and have the overhead of this temporary organisational structure to manage a program, as well as all the programs, projects, initiatives that fit within that. So there's this idea that thinking of the future state of the organisation, that needs some sort of blueprint to define what that future state is going to look like. What's the organisation going to look like? What are the skills and competencies of the staff needed to be? What technology is needed to support that blueprint? So that's this idea of trying to, as I say, look into the crystal ball, define the future state, and be as specific as possible what that might look like, this blueprint. In terms of the program itself, there needs to be some sort of terms of reference, and that generic phrase, terms of reference, can be expressed in a number of different and expanding in terms of level of detailed documents. Initially, there's some sort of mandate from the sort of strategic process of the organisation that says, I'm sort of delegating responsibility to the program to deliver X. And that's supported by this vision, and that links obviously to the blueprint in terms of this is where we see the direction of travel for the business, this is why we're doing it, and that then forms a sort of a brief, the initial outline at a high level of what the program's all about and what it hopes to deliver. And that, just like a project has an outcome which can be supported by a business case. A program is no different, and it will need a full business case to look at the benefits, the timescales, the risks, before a lot of investment is made. And linking that all together is this idea that we also need to have a more robust way of looking after the benefits, and there's this idea of this benefits map, which is what links the business case and the benefits in there to the blueprint, to make sure that there's congruence between sort of where we start from, what we're set out to do, and what we're hoping to achieve once that program is delivered. And that is the structure around which the program can then commission projects and initiatives to actually deliver those benefits and capabilities to bridge that gap. And that's all governed and sort of supported in parallel by a whole host of supporting activities, such as governance, program planning, sort of quality controls, and communications. Just as projects have stakeholders, programs generally affect more people in an organisation, so communication is highlighted even more. The similarity between programs and projects continues in that programs also have a life cycle, and the start it, plan it, do it, close it, and learn from it that I've applied to projects also applies to programs. As I say, it generally spans a longer period of time from start to close, but the basic ideas of what happens in each one of those phases is still relevant. Also on the screen, just like when I introduced the generic life cycle for projects, I highlighted something called PRINCE2, which was one of the UK methodologies that's used on projects. Again, the Managing Successful Programs Framework, or MSP, is again a UK-based framework for helping to manage and structure programs in a sort of a quality way, linking back to the body of knowledge. And they define the life cycle stages as identifying a program, defining the program, managing delivery of the program, and closing a program. And that's where some of the key elements that I introduced on the previous slides were sort of come from. You've got the mandate, the vision, the brief, the blueprint, the benefits map, and the business case. And the slide also highlights certain things that need to happen in each of those phases. And this particular slide is in the slide pack on this site, if you want to look at that in more detail. And then it also highlights that delivery of program is through projects and initiatives, and that's got this sort of start it, plan it, do it, close it activities for each project, and that those life cycles sit within this overall program life cycle, and it's the projects and initiatives that will help deliver the capability and realise the benefits. While we're on the subject of benefits, there's also a bonus video looking at benefits and outcomes as part of the plus level of membership on this site. That if you decide you want the slides, there's a few extra bits and pieces, including this video, that you get by going to that premium level of membership here at learnprojectmanagementfast.com. And the final consideration in this sort of fast overview of program management is looking at the governance structure on a program. Within the governance of projects, we had this generic project sponsor creates the project board. The project board is responsible for the governance of the project and for appointing the project manager, and that still exists for all of the projects and initiatives that may take place within this umbrella of a program. But because the program works at a slightly more senior level and has this big strategic importance, there's also this level of governance and structure above the projects that's summarised on the screen. So just like an individual project may have a sponsor, the program as a whole may have a sponsoring group. It may well be the board, it may well be a senior director, but there's this idea of, again, a senior responsible officer, the program sponsor, and other strategic managers that might want to bring everything together to sort of get the necessary buying to do stuff and get the program moving. There's some sort of program board, which again may be the sponsor or may have some program director appointed because it's such an important transformational piece of work that's going on. There will be the program manager who's responsible for running the program in the same way that a project manager is responsible for running the project. And because of this idea of delivering benefits, the board will also include business change managers as people in the business who will ultimately benefit from all of these benefits and capabilities that are being delivered, and they need to sort of be in that sort of governance structure to make sure that things are going the way they want them to. And the program manager will also be sort of responsible for a program office. As I said at the beginning of this video, the whole concept of project program portfolio support is something that's happened in a big way since the new millennium, and this idea that in order to improve the competence of projects and programs within an organisation, there's a certain amount of support that's needed. There's some specialist things that happen that project managers are good and responsible and need to have an overview for everything, but they won't necessarily be doing detailed planning on a daily basis. They'll only do the detailed planning in the planning phase, and then they might replan as they need to. So having some people in the organisation that do planning as their core job, and they can be brought in to help individual projects and programs as needed, is a good thing. Also within the program, they also might have suppliers, advisors and stakeholders that are affected and impacted by the program itself. And as I said a moment ago, the amount of politics and communication needed at a program is at a much higher level than that often associated with a project. So there you have it, an introduction to program management. It's been a slightly whistle-stop tour, and there's a lot more that we can go into, but I just really wanted to give a flavour of what programs are all about and how they are similar to projects but also different from projects in that they sort of cater for this additional layer of management, this additional temporary organisational structure, this umbrella that sits above projects when it needs to help deliver strategic change and major sort of business change and benefits. So hopefully you got something out of that.